How can you have this experience and not trigger an addictive response where you have to return to it again and again and again, and then enter that very slippery slope of making the experience itself the thing that you are actually looking for, rather than the benefits of the experience and how those benefits can be integrated into your life. Welcome to In the Circle. I am Tommy Rosen, as you know, and I'm excited to hear what's on your mind and what's on your heart. Which one of you brave souls would like to jump in and offer up an inquiry? Okay. Our first brave soul, I see Aaron.
Yeah, Tommy, so grateful to be here with all of you guys. This is an amazing space to be in and able to get into these conversations. And one of the questions I have, so with regards to psychedelics, things like medicinal mushrooms and ayahuasca becoming more popular in people's awakening into their collective consciousness, and now ketamine therapy. I don't know if you're familiar with how ketamine therapy is now being used for people with PTSD and people with deep addiction. What do you think is going to be the connection between this integrative approach with the breath work that you do and these other types of modalities? Is there a synergy with it? And is it going to be also, is there a place for it in people's recovery?
Wow, Aaron, thank you so much for opening this discussion about psychedelic therapies. I can't think of a topic more relevant, and also a topic which comes, it's presented to me on almost a daily basis. Literally somebody coming to me and saying, Tommy, what is your perspective on psychedelic therapy, your perspective on psilocybin, your perspective on ketamine, your perspective on ayahuasca, on all the psychedelics and psychotropics? Where do you stand? You know? And so I want to preface this by saying that this is a very important question. The answer that's coming is not black and not white. This is very complex, and you're dealing with human development, spiritual development. You're dealing with a variety you're dealing with variables of the human experience, which are so numerous and so vast that one can't answer this in any one way. That said, I want to share my personal experience and the wisdom that I've gained from it. And I hope to shed light and ultimately to create an openness and an exploration that this inquiry naturally is going to permit us to get into. Okay, with that in mind, all the psychedelic drug use that I've done in my life was done before the age of 24. Most of it done between the ages of 14 and 20, maybe 14 and 22. Everybody who asks me about psychedelics, they want me to take a stand. I'm pro psychedelics. I'm against psychedelics. Like, everybody wants just a declaration of this is good. This is not good. And of course, life is not that way. When I look back on my experiences with psychedelics as a child, as an adolescent, I can start by saying I certainly don't regret my use of psychedelics. I can also tell you that my use of psychedelics was not in any way, shape, or form clinical. So I'm not in a situation where there's a therapist present, where there are blindfolds over my eyes, where there's a group of people that are taking notes about my experience. And then I'm going through a process with that guide or that mentor to help me understand what my experience has been. On the contrary, my experience with psychedelics was utterly free form. So that's important for people to understand, because, you know, if people want me to take a stand about psychedelic therapy, I guess the first thing I'd have to say is, well, I've never been in a therapeutic setting and taken psychedelics. I have no direct experience with what people are doing today in a clinical setting. So it's very difficult for me to say, is ketamine therapy, psilocybin therapy under the guidance of a therapist or a guide or a teacher, is that a great thing? Is that a helpful thing with mental health issues? For sure, I know people who have had positive experiences in ketamine therapy. I also know some people that have not. I know some people who have had very positive experiences with psilocybin therapy. And I know some people who have not. I know some people who have had amazing breakthroughs and openings in ayahuasca ceremonies and interacting with that particular plant or that combination of plants. And I know some people that really took it too far and ended up in more of a mental health crisis than when they began. I know some people that were very ungrounded emotionally and ungrounded mentally, who went into psychedelic experiences and ended up hurting themselves. I know some people who were sober in the abstinent from drugs and alcohol form of sobriety, like Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. I know people who were sober who asked me, or told me, I'm going to go and have this experience. And some of them had positive experiences that created a liberation for them. And some of them ended up triggering for them a relapse. And they went back to drinking, or they went back to using other drugs, which were detrimental to their health and their physical and mental well-being. So you see, right here, we have to accept that this is not a one-size-fits-all. I also want to tell you, this is not a moral issue. This is not right, and this is not wrong. Any more than you could say cannabis, good, cannabis, bad. No, any more than you could say celery juice, good, celery juice, bad. Like, everything depends on the person, their history, their genealogy, their family, their belief system, the context in which they imbibe in a ceremony or in an experience, their readiness. Of course, they're going to be influenced by the guide or the teacher that takes them through it, and the community of people that are around them. All of these things are going to be factors. And for me, the single most important factor for the person who decides to look to psychedelics for therapeutic benefit, the single most important factor will be what happens after. How are you able to integrate? What did you learn? Okay, having learned that now, how will you integrate these new findings, these new learnings, these new developments into your life? I find that the integration piece is much, much more important than the event itself. Now, that's very significant. One of the reasons that there's so much sort of challenge in approaching psychedelics and approaching these forms of therapy, one of the challenges can be that the experience itself is so powerful. It's so powerful. I mean, the psychedelic experience is not a small experience. And because it's such a big experience, and because it's such a visceral experience, the day-to-day integration of the monumental experience that's taken place can seem boring, inconsequential, not as important. And if you think the event itself the taking of the psychedelic and the experience of psychedelic, if you think that's the thing, then one is setting oneself up to need to return to it again and again. And now we're getting into this question, this inquiry of, okay, a lot of people look at this as medicine. I myself see that there's a medicinal and therapeutic use under some contexts with some people in certain situations for psychedelic therapies. So when does it become dangerous? How can we get the most out of these experiences? Who would most benefit from these experiences? And for those people, how can they learn to integrate whatever it is they're learning so that they can be what? What are we looking for? Liberation, freedom, better relationships in the world, more truthfulness in our life, more joy, more contentment. A wise young man told me what he's interested in is living at an optimal level. How can we do this? So somebody comes up to me and says, Tommy, I've been sober in Alcoholics Anonymous for 10 years. I've made a decision now that I want to engage in psilocybin therapy. And I'd like to know what your position is on that. And I say, well, I can take no position on that for you. I accept fully that you are an intelligent being. I accept fully that you've come to a decision that you want to have this experience. And if you really want to ask me a question, ask me how you can get the most out of this experience and how to set yourself up for success. And most importantly, since you're somebody that identifies as having an addictive mindset, how can you have this experience and not trigger an addictive response where you have to return to it again and again and again, and then enter that very slippery slope of making the experience itself the thing that you are actually looking for, rather than the benefits of the experience and how those benefits can be integrated into your life. So we don't want to set ourselves up for failure. And if we're looking for a magic pill, and, you know, whenever anybody comes to me from recovery, from the world of recovery, and says, I've made a decision and I want to do this, usually it's because there's something in their life that is painful or perplexing for them. They don't feel free. They feel caught in some way. Maybe they're caught in physical pain, chronic pain in their body. God, I'm in chronic pain, chronic pain, chronic pain. Maybe they're in chronic pain emotionally. Maybe they are stuck in depression or anxiety. Perhaps they're stuck in a constant stress loop and they don't know how to break out of it. And they've been in it so long and they've tried many different things that they think, well, maybe this is the thing that could work for me. Maybe they're right. How could I possibly say? Like I told you, I've seen people have positive effects and I've seen people have negative effects. Now, here's where I, in some ways, I'm a little bit different than other people in the field of recovery or in the field of mental health. You see, I believe that there's a relevance for these treatments. Absolutely. I think, you know, psilocybin mushrooms are growing on the planet Earth. I don't think it's an accident. I think the questions that loom for all of us throughout humanity are, how do we benefit? Where do we benefit? When do we benefit? And is this necessary? Is the psilocybin experience essential, meaning elemental to the human experience? That's an enormous question, you see, because if we felt that, you know, psilocybin was an essential experience, generally speaking, for humanity, what we would be saying then is that everybody generally would need to have this experience to experience the essence of being a human being and all that that means. Of course, I don't agree with that position at all. Not at all. I can look back on my own experience with psilocybin and other psychedelics and say, all in all, those were positive experiences for me. They showed me certain things, which I don't believe I integrated very well, and didn't have the tools and the guidance and the teachers and the wisdom to integrate what I was learning. But they were important experiences for me nonetheless. And I can tell you at the same time, after having dozens upon dozens, maybe several hundred psychedelic experiences over 6 or 8 years, I still descended into severe drug addiction to cocaine, addiction to heroin, addiction to alcohol. I was already addicted to cannabis. And yes, you can be addicted to cannabis. And I had, you might say I had an addiction to psychedelics as well. Some people say, oh, you can't be addicted to psychedelics. My definition of addiction is a behavior you continue despite it bringing a negative consequence into my life. And by the end of however many dozens of trips I had had, surely the benefit and the value and the medicinal quality of the psychedelics, for me at least, was not continuing forever. It was as if the value of them had worn out, or perhaps I had worn out my welcome in the psychedelic realm, and that the universe, the intelligence, the greater intelligence of the universe, was asking me to look a little deeper, to begin to do some of the integration work, some of the healing work, some of the recovery work, where I would have to look at my behavior, my patterns, my body, my diet, my relationships, and start to really change my life. Psychedelics may have given me a glimpse of something else possible, and they may have even helped me to get out of my very painful childhood and give me a way forward. But it was a mistake for me to make those into a lifestyle. They were medicinal, and then I needed some help to integrate and to learn what I could learn, and to take those learnings and apply them to a life well lived. Later on, I became clean and sober. I let go of drugs and alcohol from my life completely. So no drugs, no cannabis, no alcohol, no drugs of any kind, except some tobacco way back in the day. It's been a long time for that too, but back in the day when I first got sober, I was smoking. And then also caffeine. Other than tobacco and caffeine, I've done no drugs for over 32 years. So I'm sitting here talking to you as a person who has investigated other ways to fulfill my heart and my spirit, other ways to develop a life of meaning and purpose, other ways to live in the vibration of love, which is ultimately what I think we're looking for, and ways to solve the problems of my life as they present themselves in each different phase of my life. The methods that I've used and that I've applied for these 32 years have been yoga, a very, very deep dive and deep study of yoga and experience of yoga, meditation, a very, very deep exploration of the mind, of my mind and how it operates, breath work, to help me to learn how to change the frequency of this body, to help me to manage difficult emotions, to help me change my emotional state, to help me drop into meditative states. The breath has helped me with this. I've learned how to work with this nervous system. I've learned how to work with the endocrine system, which is the chemical or hormonal system of the body. I've learned all these things through what I refer to as natural, sustainable means. It's not that psilocybin isn't natural. It grows from the earth. It's not that many of the psychedelic substances are natural, meaning they occur naturally in nature. But like all medicine, They're not for everybody. They're not for always. They don't cure everything. And dose matters, and frequency matters, and context matters. And so we're going to have to figure this thing out as a society. Should we explore scientifically, experientially, what's here for the human race? I think absolutely. Should these substances be illegal? Absolutely not. I think, I am for what anybody else is for. I want the end of suffering, my own and others. I want the end of addiction. I want our planet to survive. I want us to survive on this planet in a sustainable, harmonious way. Obviously, we are not exactly on the right track when it comes to that goal, but hopefully we're working on it. So I want the same things, but the main way that I'm different is I believe there should be at least one place you could go or turn to where the use of psychedelics, the use of any compounds, the use of any drugs is not part of the plan. And for me, that's what I do in the world. I don't advocate for psychedelic use. I don't advocate against it. I simply am for what we are exploring, which is yoga, meditation, the human mind, body, and spirit. I'm deeply into looking at food protocols that will shift a person's gut biome and that will shift a person's mind through the use of foods, mostly in the plant kingdom. I'm deeply interested in athletics, movement, yoga, deeply interested in the energy body. And I've been able to do a 32-year exploration on these modalities, which have not included antidepressant drugs, which have not included psychotropic drugs, which have not included psychedelic drugs. That's not to say someone who's using those drugs or needs those drugs or feels that they need those drugs is wrong in any way. It's just simply not what I do. And this is where I sometimes get into big trouble in the world, where people are like, you said it's bad to take antidepressants. No, I didn't. I said it's just not what I do. I advocate for you to have freedom. And here's the catch about freedom. If you are under the influence of the marketing and advertising forces of the world, you may think you're making a free choice, and you might not be. So I'm interested in empowering the individual to follow their heart and follow their soul down a path that leads to healing, health, love, wellness, connection, kindness, compassion, and true oneness with humanity and with the earth and with everything that is. That's what I'm for. And if a person has decided, well, I'm going to try ketamine therapy, and they ask me about it, I'll have to say, well, I have no personal experience, but I know somebody who does. And maybe I trust this person, and I think they're doing good work in the world. Let's send you to this person to find the best possible experience you can have. And if they're a person in recovery like me, or who has recovered from addiction, I would say, and be mindful, be very careful. There's some pitfalls here, especially for someone who thinks like I do. So you want to be very careful not to make this the thing in your life that's going to be the thing in your life. You got to be really, really careful here. And finally, last thing I'll say, Aaron, before I'll come back to you, is a lot of people talk to me these days about microdosing. So here's another question that comes up around therapy and therapeutic. And remember, we're all on the same page. We all want the same thing. We want harmony, peace, health, and love. I think pretty much That's been figured out. So I'm not against, and you're not against me. I'm just going to say, whoever you are, you're not against me. And I'm not against you. We're out in the field that Rumi spoke about. We're in the field out beyond wrongdoing and right doing. And we're meeting there to explore this. Microdosing is a funny thing when you talk to somebody who has an addictive personality. You know, someone comes up to me and they're like, oh, what do you think of microdosing? All I can say is I've never considered it. I've never considered it a possibility, and I wouldn't ever consider it a possibility because it doesn't fit my personality. Here's what I know about microdosing for someone like me. That microdose is going to become very slowly, imperceptibly larger over time. And the next thing you know is someone like me who started microdosing, I'm going to be macrodosing. Give me a month. Give me a month and I'm already on the macrodosing experience. So it makes sense to me that people would explore dosage in addition to exploring different forms of psychedelics to deal with their mental health issues. And yeah, we do live in a world where we need help. I've been able to find that through breathwork practices, through yoga, through meditation, we've been able to create significant changes in people's brains and minds that have brought about a freedom that those people never thought was possible. And in some cases, those people were people who have taken psychedelics or wanted to and decided to try this first. And they had such profound experiences through yoga, breathwork, and meditation that they were like, well, the reasons for which I was interested in going down the psychedelic route have disappeared. I've come to wholeness. And so again, I think there should be a place in the world, let's call it Recovery 2.0. There should be a place in the world where people could go, where drugs, where I know people don't like to call psychedelics drugs. So where psychedelic therapeutic substances, such as those substances, are not part of the game. And so we're holding space here at Recovery 2.0 for such a thing. I just trained 27 more coaches in the Recovery 2.0 method of recovery and health and healing. And of course, this topic comes up. And so people ask me, are we going to embrace psychedelic therapies as part of Recovery 2.0? And I said, no, we're not. Not because there's not a relevance, not because there's not a use, but because that is not what we do. And it's very important that we stay true to what we are doing, stay focused, and continue to see the positive results and continue to report those results out to the world and say, hey, you need to know that there are practices, principles, philosophies, protocols that we can get into that will change your mind, balance your nervous system, heal the endocrine system, and get you where you want to go and where you want to be in this life. Unlock all those possibilities. And so psychedelics, a good inquiry, in my opinion, not essential, but something that people who are drawn to that are going to have to figure out, how is this right for me? How, when, where, under what conditions? And once I've had those experiences or that experience, what now? What now? So Aaron, that's a very long-winded way for me to answer your question. I don't feel like I've even scratched the surface, to be honest, but I would like to hear from you what comes up for you as you hear me investigate.
Yeah, I think you brought up a lot of very important distinctions with regards to, and some of them, the ones that really stuck out to me was the integration piece. And so I've been consistently now doing breath work for over a year and a half and meditation. And I come from the world of psychedelics and ketamine. So I know what those experiences are like. The challenge that I was up against was I was using them as a spiritual bypass. And so I was searching for the experience, but realizing it wasn't sustainable. And so something for me every day, something like meditation, breath work, yoga, brings me back. To me, addiction is escapism, right? Escaping what? Escaping this moment, right? Not realizing, not processing my emotions, like being afraid of my emotions, right? My physical body and my emotional body. And so as I'm becoming like a therapeutic coach, I'm realizing how important all of these different pieces are. Like you are the wisest person that you know. I couldn't tell you what I know is what's best for you. And so I'm coming to that understanding has been really important for me, to not project my own thoughts and opinions onto other people, and just trusting the process.
Okay. Amazing. I have to comment on a few things that you've brought up here. Number one, when you say that you are the wisest person that you know, I cannot agree with that any more than I do. And this speaks to the need for guides and coaches, teachers, to help a person to unlock their own experience, their own genius. This is so critically important in the process, giving another person the space to interpret their own experience without somebody forcing a belief system down their throat is so critically key. And by giving a person that space, the most wonderful therapeutic opportunities become available. So that's the first thing. Second thing, you use that incredible phrase, spiritual bypass. This is so important to cover with regards to psychedelics. Yes. Also, though, in general, what a huge topic. So I don't want to spend too much time on it. I'll say this, relevant to the inquiry about psychedelics. The experience, once again, is so powerful. It is easy for a person to assume or to actually feel, now that I've had this powerful psychedelic experience, I now see. Now I'm healed. I'm past my struggle. And as I related to you a moment ago, because I had such a profound experience with psychedelics through my adolescent years, and then really descended into severe drug addiction, obviously that idea that, I once was blind, I took psychedelics, and now I see, there's something missing from that equation. Again, I feel the bypass you speak about, that spiritual bypass, what's missing from that is time, steadiness, guidance, day-to-day observation and learning from teachers and teachings. The path of yoga is very clear on all of this. We need a teacher. We need teachings, scriptures. We need this concept of surrender. We need a community. These are the things that we need to learn and grow. These have been true throughout time. This is not a belief system. This is human beings. It's sort of in the user manual of being a human. These are the things that we need. So if we are mistaking the profound experience of a psychedelic experience as the teaching itself, we are setting ourselves up for some suffering. I truly believe. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I mean, you make the external experience the thing that's more important than what's going on in the internal world. Mm. And I'm constantly missing the point of what's happening right now, because I'm constantly in search of this peak experience, when it's really about, for me, it's about mastering the mundane, which is the day to day, because that's where most of life is happening.
Mastering the mundane. You are a ninja bringing that up. That's incredible.
Because that's in the right. And so the peak experiences, they happen, great. But if I'm constantly trying to live in that peak experience, that could become an addiction. Yes.
Well, that's the story of the first sort of 25, 30 years of my life.
Right.
Shooting after the peak experience. And when I see other people do that, when they're seeking wisdom, or they're seeking healing, or they're seeking medicine through psychedelic means, like I said, okay, if that's what you've decided, let's figure out how to make that work. But it's also going for the firecracker experience of just the epicness of it. And for someone like me, at least, it takes a long, long while to integrate something like that. And I know that I chased it, day after day, year after year for a long, long time in my life. It made it very hard for me to ever find my own grounding and to ultimately connect with myself, my true self, which was the point of, connecting with self and with God, connecting with purpose and with love, for me, was always the point of any medicine. And unfortunately, I treated those medicines as I mistreated those medicines as mind-bending, mind-blowing experiences that I wanted to repeat again and again, forgetting the whole point of it. So anyway, thank you so much for this inquiry. Aaron, is there anything that you'd like to add?
Just one last thing. I struggle with heroin I'm 48 now, but in my early 20s. And it was interesting because doing that breath work, there was a moment where I was just even sitting and slowing down my breath so much where I had that warm sensation of what I was always searching for with heroin, but I found out it's already within. Just similar to like psychedelic experiences with DMT, all these things are actually within us and we can access them naturally. But I think it's so important that, like you said, have a teacher, have a guide, have someone there with you to walk you through the next step and unpack that next part of ourselves is super important.
Yes. And I guess I'll finish with this. I would say that living outside in is painful. Learning to live inside out is really where that freedom comes. And I think it's the correct orientation. Correct meaning, as within, so without. It's been said in many scriptures and teachings down, over the thousands of years, Jesus, for example, behold, the kingdom of heaven is within. And so living from the inside out, rather than expecting the outside to align with our inner needs, much better approach. Thank you, Aaron, so much for your wisdom and for your bringing this up today. It's so important. And I think it's going to benefit a lot of people. And certainly it's provocative in terms of the subject matter. So let's see what comes out of it.